Today, we're going to be starting a new series called Doomsday Murders, the case of Lori Vallow-Daybell. This will be a 4-part mini-series, and if you're new here, hit that like button, ring that bell for notifications. Also, please subscribe. Help a girl out. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode. Like I said, this will be a 4-part series, so today we're going to be doing an overview in the background of Lori and Chad. So, So the Vallow-Daybell unalivings, I will be using unaliving instead of murders, so for YouTube purposes. You know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. But anyway, the Vallow-Daybell unalivings consist of a series of unaliving, and this includes the unaliving filicide and spousal unaliving. And can we guess who committed these heinous crimes? If you've guessed Lori Vallow-Daybell and Chad Daybell, you will be correct. Now, if you do not know who these two are, then you have been living under a rock. These crimes were committed by Lori Vallow-Daybell and Chad Daybell. This couple led a Mormon religious couple. They were a couple led by a Mormon religious group described as the Doomsday Cult. In this case was set in motion when Lori started Tylee Ryan, who was 16, and her adopted son JJ, Josh Jackson Vallow, who went missing who was 7, and he went missing on September 8th and September 23rd, 2019. The remains were found in Rexburg, Idaho on June 9th, and the children had been buried on their own property, owned by Chad. And keep in mind that at the time, he was Lori's lover, not her husband at this time. And it's also important that by the time the bodies were found, he was her husband. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, this case also involves the unaliving of Lori's previous husband, Charles Vallow, Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell, and as well as attempted unaliving of Lori's nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreaux, and Lori's brothers. Now, Lori's brother, Alex Kroc, was believed by authorities to have participated in these crimes, but he conveniently died before he was ever brought to justice. Now, at the time, Chad and Lori belonged to the LDS Church, and however, their beliefs is significantly deviated from mainstream Mormonism. Chad was an apocalyptic author and publisher, and he also believed that he had visions from the future and lived in multiple past lives, along with prophesied the world in July at the end of July 2020. We saw it happen in 2020. There was no world coming to an end. There was a lot of panic buying toilet paper, though. Seriously. Really? Um, the lighting is gonna bug me. This is the best way I can do with the lighting. I'll fix it later. But, yeah. Now, Lori had come to share her French beliefs and was even convinced that she was a deity destined to play a role in the coming apocalypse. Now, she also believed that her family was getting away from her mission. Tylee was last seen alive on September 8th and JJ on September 22nd. In late November, the police questioned Lori about JJ's whereabouts. She and Chad abruptly vacated their home in Idaho and left for Hawaii. Now, as police searched for JJ, they discovered that Tylee was also missing and that the children's case attracted media attention as Lori and Chad refused to cooperate with law enforcement. Investigations revealed um, that the children's disappearance had been preceded by and followed by suspicious deaths of Lori and Chad's respective spouses by the unaliving attempt of Brandon Boudreaux. Now, then the then husband of Lori's niece. Now, Lori and Chad were also married 2 weeks after the death of Chad's first wife, Tammy. And after the children's disappearance became known, Tammy's body was exhumed by law enforcement officials, revealing that she had been asphyxiated. Now, on February 20th, 2020, Lori was arrested for desertion and non-support of her children. And on June 9th, the police discovered that the remains of Tylee and JJ. And during the search of Chad's home and property in Idaho, and Chad was arrested on destruction of concealment of evidence. And on May 25th, 2021, Lori and Chad were charged with first-degree unalivings of Tylee and JJ and Tammy. Now, prosecutors said that the couple had conspired with Cox to commit the unalivings, not only as part of apocalyptic belief, but also to remove the obstacles to their affair and to collect life insurance money and the children's Social Security benefits, using religion to justify their crimes. Now, Lori and Chad were tried separately. Smart. And on May 12, 2023, Lori was found guilty of all charges related to the killings of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. And on July 23rd, she was sentenced to imprisonment with no possibility of parole. And I emphasize no possibility of parole. Now, on May 30th, 2024, Chad was also found guilty on all charges, and on June 1st, he was sentenced to death. After her sentencing in Idaho, Lori was extradited to Arizona, where she had to stand trial twice. First for the killing of Charles Vallow, and then for the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. Her first trial is scheduled for March 31st, 2025. So that trial is coming up, and I can't wait. And I'll keep y'all updated as soon as I get something on that one. Now, let's dive into some background real quick, okay? Um, sorry. Chad Guy Daybell was born August 11, 1968 in Provo, Utah, to a Mormon family. He grew up in the neighboring family of Springville. Why does that town sound so familiar? If you recall, there's been a Ruby Frankie case going on, and that's where their home was, in Springville. I don't know if it's tied together, but I just thought that's an interesting tidbit for y'all to know. But he was accepted into BYU. 1 year into college, he applied to be a missionary, for which he spent 2 years in New Jersey. He then resumed his studies and graduated from BYU with a BA in journalism. He was married to Mara Douglas, Tammy, on March 9th, 1990, and they would have 5 children. Ooh, 5 children. Yeah. Now, Chad worked for a time for copy editors in the Standard Examiner in Austin, and at various times during and after his studies, he supported himself by working as a gravedigger. Now, then as a cemetery sexton in Springville. Now, Chad's first religion-themed novel, An Errand for Emma, was published in 1999 by Springville-based Cedarfort Inc. Now, he eventually left his employment cemetery to focus on his writing. And in 2001, he published One Foot in a Grave, a nonfiction book that chronicles his experience working in cemeteries. In 2004, Chad and his wife founded Spring Creek Book Company, which he self-published. He published his beliefs regarding the end of times and other religion-themed books aimed for the Latter-day Saint audiences. Now, by the end of the 2000s, the Daybells were facing financial problems, and at the time, Chad's publishing business provided an annual income of approximately $2,000. But both spouses had to work hard to supplement that income, with Chad being employed again as cemetery sexton. Eventually, Chad salvaged his company and found an audience among people concerned with the second coming of Jesus, becoming a popular author and speaker in the radical Mormon circle. He published dozens of fiction and nonfiction books, and by himself or other authors. Now, Chad's novels often depicted apocalyptic suspicions and dystopian futures, and featured characters based on his own family. A recurring theme in Chad's memoir and novels were supernatural voices giving him instructions and advice to him on his characters. Now, he claimed to have two near-death experience that allowed him to receive supernatural visions from beyond the veil. And he commented, "I don't fictionalize any of the events portrayed in my books. I'm really not that creative. My torn veil allows information to be downloaded into my brains from the other side. Yeah, this guy sounds like a wacko, right? Anyway, he also goes on to say that the scenes I am shown are real events that are going to happen. And Chad was also a regular contributor to Another Voice of Warning, a Mormon paid forum, which he discussed his near-death experience and his thoughts on the future. Now, over time, his religious beliefs became increasingly extreme. Jason Gillian, the husband of Tammy's sister later recalled Chad's views had started changing around 2006 2007 as he became hyper focused on preparing for the end of time. In 2010 or 2011, he started claiming that he had visions about how the world was going to the end of the world was going to occur. In 2013, he began prophesying there would be earthquakes, war, destruction in the Americas. Now, during the 2010s, Chad became the publisher of a cryptic apocalyptic author and self-proclaimed clairvoyant of Julie Rowe. And she and Chad have similar prophecies and about the end of time and claims their own connections to the spirit world. Yeah, you can imagine my face right now if you're listening to this. But both were particularly popular among Mormon preppers who believed that the end of the world would be imminent and considered regrouping to 10 cities to await a doomsday. Now, Suzanne Freeman, another author published by Chad, later said that she had to stop working for him in 2010s over concerns about his radicalization and his deviation from Mormon teachings, becoming convinced that his beliefs were dangerous. Now, in 2015, Chad claimed that he heard a voice telling him to relocate to Rexburg, Idaho, and he and Tammy moved there from Springville in June. Now, Chad said that he had a vision that Utah would be devastated by an earthquake in 2015. It's still going. Now let's talk about Lori Vallow-Daybell. I always want to say Lori Daybell Vallow, but it's Lori Vallow-Daybell. But anyway, Lori Ryan Daybell, also referred to as Lori Vallow-Daybell, was born Lori Noreen Cox on June 26, 1973, in Loma Linda, California. She grew up in a Mormon family in 1992 at the age of 19. She married her high school boyfriend, but that marriage ended in divorce shortly afterwards. In October 1995, she married again and had a son, Colby, in 1996, before divorcing in 1998. She worked at some time as a hairdresser. In 2004, she was a contestant in the Miss Texas beauty pageant and on Wheel of Fortune. Now, in 2001, Lori married a man named Joseph Anthony Ryan Jr., who legally adopted Colby, and the couple's biological daughter, Ty Lee, was born in 2002. Now, Lori and Ryan were divorced in 2005, and this was engaged to a bitter custody battle in which she accused him of sexually assaulting their children. Now, Ryan eventually lost custody. Lori's eventually lost equal custody, and Lori's brother Alex attacked Ryan in 2007, claiming that he had been abusive to Lori and the children. And Cox served 90 days in prison for the incident. In now in 2020, Colby claimed during an interview that as a child he had been sexually abused by Ryan. In 2018, Ryan was found dead in his apartment, and that was determined to be something with a cardiovascular disease. I am not attempting to pronounce that word. I am sorry. I'm terrible at names as it is, and I'm going to butcher that word up for sure. Me and the medical field have an agreement that we can talk about it, but we can stay away from each other at the same time. Now, after Lori's arrest in 2020, after recording resurfaced that she had mentioned wanting to kill Ryan, like Neppy killed, police reviewed Ryan's death. Nothing was found to suspect foul play. Now, February 2006, Lori married Leland Charles Anthony Vallow. So, which marriage is that now? That's 3, right? Yep. Is it 3 or 4? I don't lost count. Anyway, she gets married as much times as Barbara Streisand gets married. Kidding. I love Barbara. I love Barbara Streisand. I love her. But anyway, let me go with Kardashian. Kim Kardashian. Yeah, Kim Kardashian's on her way to becoming the next person to be married a lot. But anyway, in February 2006, Lori would marry Leland Charles Anthony Vallow, who commonly went by the name Charles. And in 2013, a couple adopted Charles's grandnephew, Joshua Jackson J.J. Vallow, as the boy's birth parents were unable to care for him. Because of his biological parents' substance abuse, JJ was born into drugs in his system, and at the time of neonatal intensive care unit. As a baby, he was taken care of by nearly a year by his grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock, before being adopted by Charles. Now, JJ was eventually diagnosed with autism. So, how did Vallow and Daybell meet, you may ask? Well, around 2015, Lori became interested in Chad's Standing and Holy Priest series of books. Over the next few years, she became increasingly invested in radical religious beliefs, reading books about near-death experiences and listening to podcasts by excommunicated Mormons. Now, in October 2018, together with Melanie Gibb and Zelima Pastis, whom she had recently befriended, Lori attended a Preparing a People event where she would meet Chad and for the first time. Now, Gibb and Pastis both said that Lori had behaved in a very flirtatious way with Chad at the conference, and Chad claimed to Lori that he had been married to her in previous lifetimes, and they started communicating privately afterwards. Now, after their initial meeting, Lori's husband went on a business trip, giving the opportunity to hold a small overnight gathering at her home. Chad and Gibb were among the attendees, with Chad captivating Lori and the group by sharing a Mormon influence, but unique beliefs. Now, Lori developed a strong attachment to Chad and his teachings, and the two eventually became lovers. Now, on December 5th, 2018, Chad and Lori appeared together on Preparing the People podcast called Time to Warrior Up, and the two were eventually featured on several other episodes. Now, a religious group formed around Chad and his teachings, and he and Lori told the followers that they belonged to the Church of the Firstborn, of which was a leader, in which he was the leader. Now, the group included Lori's niece Melanie Boudreaux, Gibb, Cox, and the Pastings, who eventually became Cox's girlfriend and then wife. And Gibb also hosted a radical religious podcast with Lori. Now let's talk about their beliefs. They believed in reincarnation, and this played a key part in his religious views. Now he also claimed to have lived 31 previous lives on different planets, and that Lori had 21 separate lives that coincided with his own personal experience on Earth. Now, Lori eventually told Gibb that she and Chad were sealed due to their previous marriages in past lives, despite their respective spouses still being alive. Now, when Gibb suggested that Chad and Lori should divorce of their spouses, Lori told her that they were not allowed to divorce because of the information that they were receiving from the other side of the veil. Now, Chad also claimed that to be reincarnated James of the West, and that Lori had been James's wife under the name Alina, and that they had other past lives. That Lori had been Mary French, the great grandmother of Joseph Smith. That well as the prophet Moroni, and according to Chad, past lives were multiple probations on Earth. Now, this belief is also shared by some Mormons fundamentalist groups, who consider such probations are necessary for one to reach exaltation. Now, Chad categorized people as light or dark based on his assigning into an affliction with Jesus Christ of Satan, and he and Lori employed a unique scoring system for good evil, assigning every person rating from light to dark. And according to their belief system, dark were people who were possessed by evil spirits, and the group often joined in casting ceremonies in which they would try to cast evil spirits away through prayers and scripture readings. And they claim that in some cases, possessed people could become zombies, and that others that the only way to vanish a zombie was 7 women with the group, including Lori and Zelima Pastings, calling themselves the 7 Gatherers, and who would do castings together, sometimes via Zoom. Now, Chad and Lori also scored people on the vibration scale, and it deemed those having vibrations to possess a special power to be translated. And their beliefs also included teleportations and dark and light portals, and Chad claimed that he could create such supernatural portals, which he used to interact spiritually with Lori and received revelations and travel to other realms. Now, Chad predicted that the world would come to an end on July 22nd, 2020, and he told his followers that he was guided angels toward a hidden truth, while Lori claimed to have direct communications with God and Jesus. Now, Lori came to believe that she was an exalted goddess with visionary powers, and that she and Chad were destined to lead 144,000 people who would survive the world ending. Now, Zelima Pastings later told investigators that Lori believed that, and as an exalted being, she could be held responsible for her actions on Earth. Now, Lindsay Park commented that these beliefs were categorized as Mormon fundamentalists or Mormon fanfic, and that they took fundamental tenets as an LDS mission and rewrote to extreme. And journalist Leah Sawtelle will write that, would say that Chad and Lori have been active at the fringes of the LDS church, and were able to meet in an ecosystem of extremism that exist in those circles. If you ask me, this guy's a whack job, and she is a cult, honestly. But anyway, that is it for part 1. Next week we're going to talk about Charles, Tylee, and JJ's disappearance, and the unaliving of Tammy Daybell.